Hello, welcome to this edition of the umgoblue.com podcast. This is Phil Callahan along with
Clint Derringer.
I think it's necessary. I think you have to have matchups like this in college football. Two blue blood programs going at it on a national stage. It's college game day. It's why you come to Michigan. It's probably why you go. It's why you go to Oklahoma, right? I mean, um, those are the type of games that you want to be a part of, and games you remember. Obviously, every game is important, but yeah, playing against an Oklahoma, one of the winningest programs in college football, is huge to us. And to have Michigan and Oklahoma helmet on the field at the same time. What is it, the second time we've played? So it's going to be a cool matchup to be a part of.
and we're going to preview Michigan's next game. Michigan versus Oklahoma. Michigan heads on the road. Well, Clint, what do you think about this one?
Well, if this was played at the big house, I would have exponentially more confidence. I think there's so many question marks about will the defense travel and play their best, or will they look kind of like the defense looked early last season? Is are we going to get the same Bryce Underwood on the road in his first real big spot in a hostile environment that we got, in the friendly confines of the big house? You know, is the is everybody going to be able to focus with Sharon Moore, returning home, his alma mater? Said that it's not going to be an overly emotional event for him, but I think that it's going to hit him a little bit different than he expects, or maybe he's just kind of downplaying it, and he knows what it's going to feel.
Yeah, it's about my players, so there's no like emotional attachment to it. I'm emotionally attached to the players that are at Michigan. They're my kids. I see Gio back there. I've known him since he was like 15 years old, even though he looks 30. And yeah, Gio, I'm talking about Gio. But like, it's like one of my kids. So these guys are who I'm emotionally attached to more than anything. And it's going to be an awesome atmosphere. Don't get me wrong; it's a great town, and obviously I got my degree from there, and there's a love there. But like these kids are what's special to me. So that's all I'm worried about. I'm worried about our players getting our team ready to go play this game.
I'm nervous. I predicted Oklahoma to win this game in the preseason, and as excited as I was in the aftermath of Bryce's debut on Saturday against New Mexico, I don't think that I'm changing my overall prediction here. I think Oklahoma looks good in week one. Certainly no reason to expect them to step back. And both teams moved in opposite directions in the SP Plus rankings. Michigan slid a few spots down to 15, and Oklahoma jumped up all the way to 7th. So Connolly's model kind of sees similar to what I see, and we'll talk about a little bit unit by unit, offenses versus defenses. But I still think Michigan's going to have to do something really special here to win this game.
So, I predicted in the preseason that Michigan would win this game. I think I just finished watching the Oklahoma game, and I did my customary watching Michigan, New Mexico, the first game twice, once with the sound on, once with the sound off, not liking to be influenced by what the national commentators say, but also wanting to be aware of it because many people will just repeat what they say, no matter what. So I really think this game is a pick 'em. Okay, I think we're gonna see Michigan. We're gonna see Michigan's defense in a more pure form than what we saw last game against New Mexico. We're going to see less participation. We're going to see the skill guys getting a little bit more reps. And again, we're going to see a real test, a real version of this defense. The big thing for me is Michigan has to be better on special teams. We cannot see the shenanigans we saw last game. Okay, that is absolutely, absolutely positively. We cannot see whoever is taking kicks. I believe that'll be Samaj. You got to catch that ball, right? And I also think we're going to see, Michigan has a lethal field goal team. I think we're going to see Zavada, doing his thing. So it's going to come down to you got to play solid on special teams, and you need to get vertical in the passing game. Okay, and you're going to need to block better. As you know, as you said in our previous podcast, yeah, we had that 59-yard run, but if you take that out, um, the running game was kind of pedestrian. So I think at a 50,000 foot view, those are the things I think we're going to need to see.
Yeah, and the way that SP Plus works, without getting too far into the weeds, is basically how well did you play relative to your competition. So not only does everybody get ranked by unit, offense, defense, special teams, and then overall, if you really, really play well and score a bunch of points against a really good defense, that means more for your future than playing okay and putting up a bunch of points against a weak defense, right? The strength of your opponent matters a lot in SP Plus. I think New Mexico, coming off of a really tough season, probably the worst defense in all of Division One last year, they're a little bit underrated right now. So what Michigan's offense did against New Mexico right now is not getting as much weight as I think it will get in the long run. But with that said, what Michigan did on offense against New Mexico dropped them 24 spots in their offensive ranking in SP Plus in 1 week. They went from 32nd nationally down to 56th. Now, again, 56th, if they end the season as the 56th best offense, that will be plenty good enough to play championship football because the defense is going to be fine. So I'm not complaining about the 56th ranked offense, but I did want to highlight that what we saw against New Mexico was not a dominant performance on the ground or through the air, even though we were excited about what we saw in Bryce Underwood's debut. So there's a lot of shine on that game for a Michigan fan directly. But in terms of just raw numbers, Michigan should have been able to dominate more physically in the trenches against that undersized New Mexico team. And it was a little bit of a rough sign to see them struggle between the tackles, especially in the run game with Jordan Marshall. So Brent Venables and his son is the defensive coordinator at Oklahoma. That's going to be a much tougher defense coming up here. They have the seventh ranked SP Plus defense in Oklahoma compared to what we saw from New Mexico, 134th ranked defense. So I think what we will see is going to look a lot like what we saw from Chip Lindsey and Bryce Underwood. A couple things layered in that certainly they didn't put on tape ahead of time. I think Michigan's going to score 17 or maybe 20 points. Um, and, as long as there's no major turnovers or defensive or special team scores, if Michigan scores 17 or 20 points, it's possible that they can hold Oklahoma underneath that and win a low scoring game. But I will be surprised if Michigan can get much more than 17 or 20 up on the board against this.
And I think that's a completely rational and reasonable explanation. And that's why I really come back to, the old chestnut, it's turnovers, right? It's you got to play solid on special teams. I think the factor that makes me feel really good is that the offense really only has to be good enough to get a touchdown or two and then good enough to let Zavada kick field goals, right? And it's interesting because Zavada is just a momentum killer for the other team, right? I mean, he's dangerous to 60 yards and maybe even plus. So I think that puts an added pressure on the defense to, Michigan only needs to get so many yards with a successful special teams play, reasonable field position. You only need so many yards to be in field goal position. And I think that puts a whole different pressure on opposing defenses. Now, you can't turn the ball over. And of course, if the Michigan defense can cause some turnovers, and I think that's why I feel good about this game. I mean, I'm going to be there. And as I always say, I don't go on the road expecting them to lose. But I think one of the key factors here is going to be, so we talk about how calm, cool, and collected Bryce Underwood is. Well, we're going to see it in SEC land. And I think that is going to be a key factor here, right? I mean, he's the guy with the ball in his hands, and you can you can do all the little things they do in practice. You can play music loud, and you can beat trash cans, and you can make noise and play music and do all the things. But in Norman, under the lights with a raucous SEC crowd, it's going to be something to see. I mean, it's one of the reasons I'm going, and it's one of the reasons we always say you play the games. You don't set the games up in NCAA football and run simulations and predict the score and think it's going to hold. Everybody on both teams will play to their gifts and their experience level, and it's just going to be another game for Oklahoma in their home stadium. But for Michigan, with and I think this is one of the things that, Sharon is an expert in the offensive line. That's his specialty. Well, how are those guys going to communicate? How is Bryce going to run that huddle? How is our defense going to communicate to get lined up correctly and get the right fit? I mean, there's a lot of things here that are going to be different from normal. And again, if I have a good feeling heading into this game, but I also see a lot of things that you know cause areas for concern. And again, we're going to see it. I mean, I think I'm really looking for. So you talk about Justice Haynes coming from Alabama. Hey, he's seen this before. We need leadership from him. Okay, we need leadership from Donovan McCulley. Okay, a guy who's played in a lot of different places. He was a quarterback at one time. Hey, we really need the leaders on this team to form a cocoon and help Bryce through this, because I think if Michigan can get through this first quarter without any catastrophic mistakes, not allowing any 70-yard kick returns or muffing any punts or any kicks or any really bad interceptions or turnovers. I like the odds here. I like how this looks, but I really think that the first quarter is going to be everything in this game.
Yeah, with a road game and the emotions of a prime time, high stakes, marquee matchup for sure. Getting a clean first quarter, even if you can jump out in front, obviously that's great. But just playing to a draw through the first quarter would be a win for Michigan, for the road team in that situation for sure. I think you mentioned a lot of things that I agree with 100%. The reason that I have a little bit less confidence in terms of picking, who I think is going to win is because we saw, some young mistakes, the kickoff fumble turnover, the freshman Marsh, that can't happen. That free scoring opportunity, you cannot give Oklahoma those opportunities in this game. The muffed punt that did not turn into an explosive return for Samaj, even though he was able to recover it, and then the hidden yards that we talked about in our last podcast. If you've got Oklahoma's the 7th ranked SP plus defense, and Michigan is the 4th ranked SP plus defense, we're going to see the punters on Saturday. We're going to be trading punts back and forth. Being able to get a first down or 2 first downs even before you punt is a big deal, but we can't be losing 10 or 15 yards in net punting every time we trade punts in this game. We have to catch the ball in the air with the return team, and we have to make sure that we're tackling well on the kick coverage teams. So all of those hidden yards, I have less confidence in. And again, you've got an 18-year-old quarterback and a new offensive coordinator on the road early in the season. We just haven't seen it before. As amazing as Bryce Underwood looked at home, I expect there to be at least a handful more shakiness or mistakes made. And the key is trying to limit the impact or the magnitude of those mistakes. And you said the absolute most important thing is it's going to come down to the leadership from the players, not the coaches, but the players. And on that offensive lineup, I think it starts with Gio El Hadi up front, Crippen at center, and Max Bredesen. Those guys that are voted captains have to step forward and make sure that they can weather the storm early on emotionally and keep everybody on track, and especially picking guys up and bouncing back from mistakes, because they're going to happen. It's a tough environment. You're a young team, and it's the first road game. Michigan was not sharp on the road last year, and let's hope that this team can prove that that was a 2024 problem and not a Michigan program problem. Because if they play clean and this is close in the second half, then it's going to be about which defense can make the big play and give their offense a leg up. But if they let it slip away, I don't think Michigan's offense is ready yet to come out firing and try to come back and put up points in bunches yet.
So, Clint, we've had other conversations where you talk about the importance of catching the ball in the air in the kicking game. And as you said, if this turns into a battle of field positions with punters, how exactly does that play out statistically?
Well, let's just use the New Mexico game again that we just discussed earlier this week on our podcast. If they're trading punts and losing 10 yards of net position, right? Because let's say all punts get fair caught, right? There's no fumbles, nothing crazy happening. It's just everybody does a fair catch. But if they're gaining 10 yards every time they punt and then we punt, right? They started on their 25. The next time they start on their 35. The third time they get the ball, they start on their own 45-yard line. They pick up 1 or 2 first downs and they're in scoring position. So we have to at least play to a draw in special teams. We cannot turn the ball over and give them an instant scoring opportunity, and we cannot play at a disadvantage on the net punting. So when you don't catch the ball in the air, like you pointed out before, that extra roll is kind of hidden yardage. So if a punter punts it 40 yards in the air, but you get 15 yards of roll, that 15 yards doesn't show up anywhere in the box score. But I can tell you it matters a ton when the defenses are forcing lots of punts, like what I expect to see this coming Saturday. So catch the ball in the air, even if they're all fair catches, that would be better than losing that extra 10 to 15 yards of roll every time the ball gets punted.
Well, and I think that's one of the big things that fans disregarded as Michigan was building to the national championship. The Michigan kicking game was really, really good. Okay. There was that very unfortunate game versus Michigan State that were lightning struck, right? And again, lots of stress and just bad feelings about that, right? But Jim Harbaugh gets a ton of credit for building the team. I don't think Jay Harbaugh got nearly enough credit for how he stabilized the special teams. And there was a ton of snark about when Jay came in, right? And I remember one of the remarks was he was the most qualified person named Harbaugh who applied, right? Kind of as a joke. But one of the things I remember about John Harbaugh when he was an assistant in the NFL, he coached special teams, and I saw some of the most amazing special teams plays when he was coaching that position. And again, one of the things we look at is kind of the things at the edges that people don't notice. Like it's easy to see the big runs and the big passes, but you could see mistakes or positive plays in special teams. Okay. So again, Jay Harbaugh comes from the Harbaugh tree. He's got his dad as a really good coach. He's got his uncle who's a really great coach. And he solidified special teams. Like you really didn't have to think about it. Not only was it not a problem, but it was almost always a positive, right? And then Michigan had really good punters and really good field goal kickers. So in a game like this, you need to see, again, do no harm, right? At least catch the ball, don't make any mistakes. And first quarter, bright lights, crazy crowd, crazy environment. I think it'll be critical to basically not shoot yourselves in the foot, right? So again, you get through the first quarter, you take the brunt of their best, you calm down, the pulse slows down a little bit, and you remember that you're on the same size field as anywhere else. And players will often talk about that they completely tune the crowd out. When you're in a zone, the crowd's hardly there. You just see the other team. And I think one of the things that we're going to see from Michigan this season that's going to be very positive is we've talked about, and even my kids make fun of me. Yes, Dad, it's a marathon, not a sprint. This season is a marathon, not a sprint. But this is a very important, sub segment of the season, right? What you need to do, calm down, get through this game, right? And remember, it's just another game, right? And I feel like that I think Oklahoma is going to come out and try to take them out, like the big knockout punch, looking for the big play or to take advantage of the big mistake. And if Michigan can get by that first quarter, and again, not having made a mistake, I like the talent on both sides of the ball, right? So we need to see special teams, if not be special, not be painful, not be harmful. And I like the Michigan defense. I like what they bring to the table. I like what we're seeing on offense, right? And then you get to see how quickly the number one prospect at quarterback can use the tools around him. And again, it's going to be entertaining as heck. And I'm really looking forward to it. And one of the reasons I'm looking forward to it is I like our chances going in.
Yeah, and I think under the gun, Bryce Underwood is going to shine. I think he has shown that his poise is just absolutely on a different level, not just for a kid his age, but for really any player. I think he's truly exceptional. So I don't want to imply that I think he's going to crack under the pressure. I do not. However, he's playing his second game at the college level against a really, really good defense. He's going to see some things that he has not seen ever through his face mask. He's going to make mistakes because any quarterback, any Big Ten quarterback is going to make mistakes against this particular defense. It's going to be a tough way to play. So it's going to be a slugfest. Michigan's going to make some great plays, some big plays, and they're going to make some big mistakes. And hopefully, when it all comes out in the wash, they end up ahead on the scoreboard. It's just when the last bit that makes me concerned. I'm not sure that we'll see a tighter rotation on defense. I know you mentioned that earlier this week when looking at the snap counts from the New Mexico game. I think Michigan is committed to rotating guys, pretty much the whole two deep on defense is going to see snaps in the first and second quarter in this game. And remember that Michigan's missing their starting linebacker, Jayshon Barham, for the first half of this game. And not only does that kind of change what they are able to do in the middle of that defense, it takes another real pass rush threat and chaos agent or creator of havoc away from this defense in a moment that they need it, probably the most to try to create those big plays and jump out front to start. So it's a really, really steep uphill climb. I expect Michigan to acquit themselves well. I don't think that we're going to see anybody on the Michigan sideline kind of crumbling under the pressure. I just think when it comes down to making the big plays in the big moments, you give a little bit of an edge to the home team. You give a little bit of an edge to the more experienced quarterback. And Really, it'll be about who can limit those big mistakes, especially once we get past halftime and into the third and fourth quarter.
So one thing we won't see in that first game, he threw that block to help secure one of the early touchdown runs. And in the post game, Sharon echoed my thoughts. I don't want to see that anymore. And in the press conference this week, Sharon said specifically that what he told Bryce.
I just tell him not to throw any more blocks.
I don't think we're going to see that. On a more serious note, I'm wondering, we're heading into SEC land, right? And there was a lot of drama when Bryce committed to LSU and then flipped to Michigan. So I'm wondering, um, you know, you head into an opposing stadium, you're always going to get some chatter and some grief from the opposing fans. I'm wondering how much extra venom there will be that he didn't go to LSU, didn't that he spurned the SEC, right? And that's one thing that game day is going to be there. I'll be checking to see what kind of signs they have if anybody calls that out, and and how much SEC brotherhood there is, uh, you know, uh, protesting the honor of LSU if there is such a thing. So that's going to be one of the things that I'll be tracking when I'm down there is, you know, will the crowd be riding him specifically because of that? There's a lot of attention because of his, you know, huge NIL deal, and that's a whole nother layer to the game now. And it's a rather cute stadium. It's only 70 or 80,000. I mean, it basically hardly qualifies as a Big Ten, major university or major crowd. There's my snark there, but it's supposed to be crazy. Okay, Sharon talked about it. He's going to be, he got his degree there. He played there, and he talked about how he's going to, talk to the players about what to expect. But I think there's a whole different level of intrigue that we'll be watching for.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure how deep the SEC roots run in Norman, Oklahoma. It's kind of like the Big Ten blue blood, USC on the West Coast. So conferences mean very little anymore. But we'll see. We'll see what kind of creativity comes out. You know, I do think there's one advantage to being the road team on a night game, especially when you've got all the buzz in town from game day. It's really hard to fight the adrenaline for a full day when you're not even kicking the ball off until between 7:30 and 8 o'clock. Watching the other games on TV, uh, trying to keep your mind clear. You want to stay focused, but you don't want to be chomping at the bit all day from the moment that you wake up. It can drain you. And I think that the home team has an extra little bit of adrenaline that kind of just drains the battery a little bit through the day on a night game. So I do think that that's an advantage for the road team because they have a real set itinerary and they're not they're not in their familiar surroundings, right? You can kind of control all of those thoughts and feelings a little bit more as a coach. So one small, advantage leading Michigan's way, but it's going to be a close game. I think both defenses are going to really steal the spotlight here, and it's going to be which offense can either eliminate the mistakes, and capitalize on the other team's mistakes, or if both teams play cleanly, then it will come down to which offense can make it happen at the end of the game. And I'll tell you, if it's a one-score game in the fourth quarter, now we're talking about Michigan special teams, especially Dominic Zavada being what maybe the most important player on the field on either sideline. If this comes down to a kick, you have to love Michigan's chances in that spot.
And with that, I think, I'm going to ring up my prediction here. I think Michigan's going to win 19-13.
Yeah, I think you've got the right offensive score. Like I said, if Michigan can get to 20, that would be better than I expect. And if they can get well over 20, then I really love their chances. But I see Oklahoma 27, Michigan 17, probably a 7 point game in the fourth quarter that gets just stretched out of reach, late in the game. And a lot to learn coming home from this one if it goes the way that I expect.
Well, Clint, I will say this, that if your score wins out, it will be a very unhappy travel day for me on Sunday. Um,
I'll never
so,
be as happy to be wrong if I am.
all right. Any final words for the podcast?
No, I'm really excited to watch this game, even though I have somewhat low expectations for how I think it's going to turn out. Um, Michigan's got a great chance to win, and if they can make those big plays, it's going to be fun to watch. And let's hope that Wink has the defense really chomping at the bit coming out of the gate, and we see Derek Moore and TJ Guy just wreaking havoc on John Mateer the way that we saw against Alabama in the ReliaQuest Bowl. Some kind of defensive performance like that, and I'll toss the prediction straight out the window in the first quarter.
Well, I'm going to end with this. Oklahoma, who are they to beat a Michigan team? So that's going to do it for this edition of the umgoblue.com podcast. This is Phil Callahan along with
Clint Derringer,
Go Blue.
go Blue.
I feel like our football team's getting better and better and better. We're really living by this motto of TNT, today, not tomorrow. So everything we can do today to get better, that's what we're trying to do. Not worried about tomorrow. It's not promised, and yesterday's gone. So obviously, any mistakes or anything that's taken place the day before, or any things that we did really well, we're not just going to harp on those things. We're going to try to get better in that moment today. So, but it's been good. We're making a lot of progress. We're becoming a physical football team, of great discipline, a great passion and togetherness. So we're really excited about where our team is at right now.
Thank you for listening to the umgoblue.com podcast. All rights reserved.